at the time, I felt like when I did articulate what I was feeling, some individuals, whether it was friends or family, they kind of dismissed my experience. So they would say something like the classic, "You're too blessed to be stressed." I got that a lot. "You're too blessed to be stressed." Which I'm not saying that's a false statement. Yes, I am very blessed, but that doesn't take away the fact that I'm experiencing anxiety attacks. So, you know, um, or, I would be told that I need to calm down or that I need to get a grip. I just felt very misunderstood. And because of the misunderstandings, it made me want to kind of close up and just go quiet. And I spent many years just keeping things to myself, which isn't always healthy. Internalizing is not good.
Yeah, I would say it's rarely healthy, actually. So you say, you say not always. Like I'm trying to think when that's a good idea.
Never a good idea. You're right.
Too blessed to be stressed, and so that's interesting because that would speak to what the idea that you have support or your family maybe has financial resources or whatever. So like, what do you have to complain about? Life is good for you, versus compare to this person or that person, and it's always such an interesting take because it's true. It's true that it could be worse, right? That whole phrase of like it could be worse. It's like yeah, but it could also be better. We're always somewhere on that continuum. And just because they're dealing with that struggle does not mean my struggles are not real to me. When you use the word misunderstood, did it actually get to the point where you felt like dismissed when you would bring that up? Or was it just, okay, yeah.
Yeah, I felt very dismissed, and it did lead to a lot of frustration. And that frustration brewed and brewed, and I developed a lot of bitterness. And it took some time in my personal journey of healing to go back to those feelings and say, well, why did I feel that way? And why do I still feel this sense of not anger, but bitterness and overcoming that? But I have to go back and like revisit those experiences that weren't so pleasant to figure out, okay, well, why? What is the why? So, yeah.
Were there specific experiences? I mean, I get the general sense of what you were struggling with, but were there specific incidences of dismissal or misunderstanding that when you had to go back and reprocess, you're like, this was particularly impactful? Or was it more just sort of the day in and day out grind of having to deal with that without support?
Yeah, I would say that probably the most impactful experience with feeling like I was dismissed was with my mom. And we're like best buds. It was a journey for both of us because I was struggling, and no parent wants to see their child struggle. And because just in many families, mental health, there's a lot of stigma. There's a lot of lack of knowledge, and how do you respond to these situations when your child is coming to you with these things. Um, my mom just was having a hard time digesting, and I think her response was what she was taught growing up. Like had like generational trauma or stigma being passed down from generation to generation. So I really believe that dismissal was not because she wanted to be that way or wanted me to get my feelings hurt, but because that's how maybe her parents responded when she was having a hard time. So it took a journey for both of us to figure out, okay, well, how do we address the situation and how do we work on communicating better with each other? And now she's learned a lot from me, and she's into mental health awareness, and she's grown a lot. So, a lot of people say that sometimes the struggle helps people grow closer. And I will say that she has put a lot, I'm very lucky. She's put a lot of effort in learning more about how to be a good support for me. And she is a great support for me and always has been. So, a journey, like I always say, it was a journey to get there. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not just as simple as go to therapy for like 2 or 3 sessions and then you get a couple tips and you're like, oh, that's it. Everything's fixed. Like generally, these experiences have been stacking up over years, right? And so it's a lot of process and a lot to deal with. And the old habits and the old behaviors and the old stigma, it's tough to shake. It's tough to not let that like come through from time to time. So I think you're very fortunate to have family members that went through it with you and make those adjustments to try to learn. I've worked with a lot of families where, people in their 40s to 50s are just like, my mom's never understood and she doesn't care to help. And they have a very fractured relationship for their whole life. Whereas actually this feels like something that has brought you guys closer together. So, it is good. When you talk about your healing journey. So was there a start to that? Was there like a moment of awakening where you're like, okay, this has to change and this is what I'm going to do about it? Like, how did you initiate, your journey, as you say?
So during my last year in high school, my dad got really sick with colon cancer. And so he was hospitalized during my entire senior year in high school. Also, my grandfather got sick unexpectedly as well. So there was just a lot of family illness. And unfortunately, they both passed away that same year. So, about a month before moving to another city to start college, my dad passed away. And it was my experience with grief, or at least being introduced to grief, that is really what prompted me to say, you know what? I can't keep pretending anymore. This is a lot. Like this is a lot. I need to get a support system and I need to process things because during my senior year in high school, I couldn't process anything because I was busy with college applications. I was busy with trying to pass my classes. I was taking care of my dad. So it was just a lot going on. And that is what prompted my decision to say, I'm going to get help. I'm going to reach out to someone. And even then, during my first year in college, it still was a process to find the right therapist, to, click with somebody. And even then, you think, okay, I've been to a few sessions. I should be fine now. And then a few months pass and then you start feeling bad again. So you're like, okay, maybe I need to go back. So, that was experiencing grief and loss is what really prompted me to say, you know what? I got to do something.